Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. I've got for you guys today some of my absolute favorite baits to throw during that late pre-spawn, early spawn period where you have a lot of fish that are starting to move up shallow. They're starting to really think about where they're going to spawn. They're eating a bunch of food, trying to save up calories so that when they go into the spawning phase, they have enough energy to actually make it through that period without feeding that much. One of my favorite times to fish, and it's something that's really starting to happen in lots of places throughout the country. And from that standpoint, these are baits that I just think you gotta have in your arsenal. They are so time tested and they just generate a ton of strikes, and you have the potential to catch a really big fish at the same time.
Today's video is brought to you by the Deep Dive app. This has had an amazing new update. As you guys know, I love the water clarity feature. As you can see right here, we're looking at Grand Lake, which just had a whole pile of rain come into it. It went from being really clear to having a lot of dirty water coming in the bottom end of it. Just an amazing feature to be able to determine where the clear water is versus the muddy water. So Deep Dive has just also introduced stream flow. Now this is a really cool feature that shows all of the water input coming into certain reservoirs and the amount of water coming in. So they measure it in cubic feet per second. You can see in this case, this is just a small creek, but then you can see the projected as well as the previous flows. If we move up the lake here, get into one of the larger rivers coming in, you can see here that we've got 490 cubic feet per second. And then it shows you that there's not much of a change expected. Now, if there's some rainfall coming, I'm sure those projections will change. If we scoot on over here to take a look at Kentucky Lake and Barkley Lake, much larger river systems, the Tennessee River, you can see what the projected outflow is going to be there, 28,000 cubic feet per second. Go check the Cumberland River here. We got 9.4 thousand cubic feet per second. Just an amazing feature that allows you to see all of the different water flows coming into the different parts of the lake. You can see which ones might be the most affected, which ones won't be affected, see what the projected outflow schedules are. A major feature to help you catch more fish. And that's on top of some of the other new features like the wind effects. Now, the wind effects is really cool because we've had wind effects as part of the app in the past, but all it did is show where the wind was hitting the shoreline the most, as you can see from the dots, the orange and bright red dots, which indicate where the wind is really striking. But now the wind feature also indicates what the wave action is like on the lake itself. So some of the features you're going to get from this is determining where to get from place to place safely by avoiding the heavy, rough water conditions. You'll be able to determine where you may have some of the strongest current flow and some of the places where you can fish to stay protected. Now, along with that, you still have some of my favorite features like the patterns that you've got on the lake that indicate the best baits and lures to fish with. You've also got the water inflow app, which shows you where a bunch of the rain input comes in. That can be an amazing pattern to fish throughout the year. Just a great feature to have. So many positive features anytime you're fishing or using the Deep Dive app. Just points you in the right direction to catch more fish. Whether you're a tournament angler or a local fun fisherman that's just out to catch a few fish, the Deep Dive app will help you catch more fish next time you're out on the water.
So let's dive right into these baits. One of my absolute go-tos anytime I'm talking that spring period is going to be a swim jig. I personally really like to throw a bluegill color like this. You've got a lot of bluegill that tend to be in the same areas where the bass are. You know, the bluegill are moving up looking for that same warm water. They're looking to feed. They're starting to think about spawning. And from that standpoint, generally speaking, if you find bass and where the bass like to spawn, you're going to have bluegill around. And the bluegill, therefore, become a really good forage species for the bass. Not to mention, the bluegill really like to pester the bass while the bass are spawning. So it's a really good idea to think about trying to match the hatch with a bluegill. So a swim jig like this core tackle swim jig with some sort of boot tail on the back to give you that smaller, compact profile design is an excellent, excellent choice. The other reason I love throwing a swim jig during this time period is because I can cover a lot of water. It's a cast and retrieve bait. It lets me break down a lot of water quickly and actually find those areas where the fish are keying in on to spawn. And when I find those areas, that's when I can slow down a little bit. But a swim jig is an absolute killer choice. Another one along those same lines is your vibrating jigs. This is the Berkeley Slobber Knocker, just a great vibrating jig. And if you're looking to cover water, again, like the swim jig, this is a really good choice to go with. You know, the swim jig to me is going to be, if you're looking at where to throw one over the other, the swim jig's generally going to be where you've got a little bit thicker cover. Maybe you've got a little thicker grass. Maybe you've got your pad stems. Maybe you're bringing it through a lot of bulrushes or cattails, things like that. I really like the swim jig. If I'm fishing a little bit cleaner area, or I'm fishing a cleaner bank, maybe it's a channel swing bank, maybe it's a nice gravel flat, that type of thing, that's where I'm going to be looking to throw more of my vibrating jigs. You know, obviously the vibrating jig can be a great grass bait as well, but a lot of times those spawning bays that the fish are starting to move back into for warmer water as well as forage and spawning are going to have cover that just is a little bit too thick, where your bait doesn't want to come through it that well if it's a vibrating jig. Now, a lot of times these areas tend to have some of that bottom slime or some debris that tends to clog up your vibrating jig, versus a swim jig can come through it a lot cleaner, and therefore you can be more efficient with it. But both of those baits, absolute dynamite, late pre-spawn, early spawn period baits. Now, once I've gone around looking for or searching for areas that have good concentrations of fish with one of those two baits, that's when I tend to slow down a little bit more. So if I feel like I'm in an area that's got a lot of bites or a lot of fish, I'll reach for something like this. This is a fluke with the core tackle scamper rig hook on the inside. Just a really good bait that allows you to slow down, and it just generates a ton of strikes. For me, a fluke is going to be a key bait if I'm fishing some of those cleaner spawning flats that a lot of times the fish will move up into. You know, up in my neck of the woods, you're talking about places that might have some rock mixed in with just a little bit of new grass growth. You're generally fishing a little bit deeper in that 4 to 8 foot range. You know, like the Ozarks is a great place to look for this. Right where you see that water dropping off, in that clear water where you can see the bottom, drops into the darker water where you can't see the bottom. That's where something like the scamper rig with a fluke can be absolutely dynamite. And I really like using baits that have some bright colors in it. This time of year, that bright color can trigger some really good reaction strikes out of the fish. And I'll put links for each of these baits in the video description. So if you're looking to support the channel and would like to purchase some tackle, please use my Tackle Warehouse affiliate link that I'll put in the video description for you. Another bait along those same lines is your wacky rig. This is the Berkeley Maxcent the General. You gotta have a soft stick bait wacky rig. I've got it rigged up here on the core tackle weedless wacky shot. Great presentation for those fish that are cruising those flats. For me, if I don't know where the fish are at specifically, I like that scamper rig better. If I feel like I've got targets that I'm throwing to on these flats in these areas where I think the fish are spawning, are getting ready to spawn. So maybe if I'm going down the bank and there's a lay down tree, or maybe there's an overhanging bush, that's where I'll throw this into. Maybe there's a hole in the grass or a hole in some lily pads. That's where the weedless wacky shot really comes in handy. It's just a good target casting bait. So you let it fall, you might pop it a few times, you might move it 5-10 feet, but you're really casting at an object. Versus like the scamper rig with a soft fluke style bait, you're kind of covering more water, but it's a slow movement. So you know roughly where the fish are at, but you don't know exactly what targets they're holding on to. Along those same lines, you gotta have a jig for getting into some of that really thick cover. This time of year, you still have a lot of those big females. You have a lot of fish that are moving into some of the thickest cover, those really thick laydowns, or up under some docks where they're staging to spawn or starting to make beds. And a jig like the Picasso Hog Snatcher can be a killer bait. I like to go with a big chunk style trailer in this situation a lot of times, because in my experience, the fish are looking for a little bit slower fall, and I'm looking to keep it in their face. The chunk style trailer also does a good job, again, at mimicking bluegill. And you also have a lot of crayfish that are starting to get really active as the water gets warm as well. So from that standpoint, you got to have a jig just to really get you into that thicker cover that you might not be able to get a weedless wacky rig into, or you might be able not to really cast and wind a bait like that swim jig. Those are 5 baits I absolutely have to have during this time of year. They're just foolproof. Does not matter where you're at in the country, you will catch fish on all of these baits. So if you don't have them, pick yourself up some. And if you do have them, go tie them on your rod and head out to the lake right now, because this bite is starting to happen in a lot of places throughout the country. If you happen to live up by me, it will start happening over the next couple weeks. So get ready for it. I know I will be. Anyways, thanks for watching. I appreciate all the support. If you enjoyed today's video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow.